Dawinderpal Singh joins me, a journalist and press officer for the Sikh Press Association. Very good evening to you. How widespread have these protests been, and are they confined to one part of India or nationwide?
Good evening, Iain. So these protests have actually been worldwide. In India, we have seen a day of strike where 250 million people went on strike, and that's out of a 402 million working population. So that's the vast majority of people in work in India going on strike in support of these farmers. On a daily basis, we're seeing hundreds of thousands. Rough estimates are about 250,000 people at any one time. But this is like a rolling figure, because sometimes the farmers go back to their farms and maybe a relative will come and take their place at the protest. Hundreds of thousands of people in India from all corners of the country coming to Delhi to protest on the border of Delhi. And then we've seen protests in London, we've seen protests in the USA, we've seen protests all over the world in support of the farmers as well.
And what's the Indian government's response been so far?
Well, from a lot of it has been through the control of the media. There have been silencing journalists, they've been arresting journalists, torturing journalists as well. There's allegations of torture for a number of journalists.
And they've shut the internet down in some areas, haven't they? And tried to ban people from Twitter.
That's right. They're actually moving to a new platform, which they've just announced today, to try and take everybody off Twitter, because there's too much freedom of speech for people to convey what the real concerns are about this protest for their liking.
In terms of the importance of the agricultural sector to the Indian economy, it is phenomenal, isn't it? And I think, do I remember right that nearly half of Indian people are involved in agriculture in one way or another, and it accounts for about 15% of GDP?
Yes, that's right. That's what I've read as well. India's always been a very agriculturally heavy economy, Punjab especially, and this is where the kind of protests started from, up in Punjab. There's been a lot of farmer suicides in Punjab as well. So there's been around 1,000 suicides per year, because these measures that have been kind of introduced, it's happened over time since around about the year 2000. We've seen like a steady kind of ramping up of bureaucracy around the agricultural sector. So there's been 22,000 farmer suicides in the last 20 years. And we're seeing, the margins that farmers are getting, not just in India, actually, all over the world, but we're seeing the margins becoming slimmer and slimmer. And this kind of...
But these are supposed to be liberalising measures, aren't they? They're not there to increase further bureaucracy, as I understand it.
Well, yeah, I mean, if that was the case, I don't understand why the Indian government would be trying to silence everybody as well. The former World Bank chief, Kaushik Basu, actually recently came out and said when he first had a look at these bills, on the surface they did seem to be benefiting farmers. But when he had a kind of really good look at them, went through the figures, he realised that actually this would be very detrimental to the whole farming community.
Let me read you out this tweet from somebody called Awoken. Iain Dale showing his white imperialist ignorance again on India this time. LBC, it is not okay to have a white British person talking about Indian topics. Hugely offensive. I mean, I kind of inwardly sigh when I read things like that, because there aren't many people on British radio who talk about these subjects, but I am one of them, because I kind of want to learn myself. I don't portray myself as an expert, but I mean, have they got a point in any way?
Well, I think you're the kind of person that your viewers relate to. So I think the message coming from you has even more power, to be honest. I think, I applaud you for actually taking this topic and actually running with it and sharing it with your listeners. I don't have a lot of place for racism, whether it's for white people or for anybody else, towards anybody else. I think, everybody has that right to freedom of speech, and you exercising it to promote this issue, I don't think you should be faulted for that.
Well, thank you. That's Dawinderpal Singh, journalist and press officer for the Sikh Press Association. Erim, we are going to come to your calls in a minute, by the way. Erim Kaur is a Punjabi Sikh entrepreneur and digital creator and founder of By Erim. Erim, very good evening to you. Why do you care so much about this issue?
Hiya, thank you so much for having me on. Matters relating to the Sikh community, and not only just the Sikh community, but India as a country. And now what we are starting to realise is ultimately it's a global issue because no farmers means no food. I've been very active within the Sikh community, speaking since I was 18 years old in the Sikh Society Committee, and now having a following that is over around 400,000, I do believe that it is my duty to speak up about these matters.
So what's your reaction to what the Indian government are trying to do? Because their supporters will say, look, we're just trying to bring Indian agriculture into the 21st century. We cannot go on with the kind of subsidies and bureaucracies that have existed up to now. All we're doing is trying to make things maybe a bit more like the rest of the world.
I think really it is about the way that things are being done, set aside what Dawinderpal, whose sentiments I completely reflect in regards to the political side of things. They have completely censored the internet. They've been arresting journals. There's been media blackouts in Delhi, Haryana, who had a complete internet blackout for nearly a week. We've had to have various Sikh organizations, including Khalsa Aid, come up to set up Wi-Fi sites. And what's happening now is we're seeing that hundreds of protesters are being named as missing now. And it's so dangerous because Wi-Fi allows people to stay in contact with their family. Not only that, but it allows them to stay educated and informed about what's going on. And kind of now what's starting to happen is the Western world is starting to listen. And thankfully, you guys have given us this platform to speak about it on LBC. And economists are doing their own analysis of what's going on. And they're also sharing content that is super valuable. So people like myself with followings, as well as those without, are able to amplify it. Had this been a more peaceful situation, I think it would have been a lot more easy for me to take that apart from what's going on politically, but I can't.
I think having been born and brought up in a country of, 68 million people now, and geographically relatively small, it's actually quite difficult for a lot of British people to understand the vastness of India, as not just in population, but in landmass. In terms of the support for the protests over the whole country, is this something that is uniting different communities? Because obviously India is not a homogenous country, is it?
100%. And this is something I'm so proud to see. At the beginning, yes, it was a lot of people from the South Asian community speaking up about it, because we do have friends and family who are currently residing in India, which is, of course, the source of everything going on right now. But that word is slowly starting to get out, and it is due to opportunities like these where young Sikhs like myself, the Sikh Press Association, have that platform to speak about it and get the word out there.
And if people want to follow you on social media, how can they do that?
They can do so by following me. It's just at Erim, E-R-I-M, on Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter is Erim Kaur. And I would most definitely encourage you to follow Khalsa Aid as well as the Sikh Press Association to keep up to date with all matters regarding this. Well, hopefully you get a few more followers. Thank you very much indeed. That's Erim Kaur there.